Imagine this scenario. You're out of the office unexpectedly, and a colleague pings you because they need access to some system you have credentials for. Now, my listeners would never send passwords over email or Slack. But what about your coworkers? How many organizations out there are sending logins back and forth in plain text? Worse yet, how many just store all of their logins on a shared spreadsheet? Keeper Security's password management platform locks down logins, payment cards, and more in a patented zero-knowledge encrypted vault. Sign up for a Keeper free trial today. Visit securityweekly.com/keeper. Picture your team being able to map out the external attack surface as it grows and see the same attack vectors as a hacker does. Most tools out there do asset discovery, but stop there. Enter Detectify. It takes an inventory of exposed web assets and automates vulnerability testing for security misconfigurations, expiring subdomains, and risks in third-party software. Here's the cool part. They crowdsource payloads from leading ethical hackers. It finds bugs you actually want to fix and finds them in time. Start a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself. Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with ExtraHop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how ExtraHop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. If you have a guest or topic you'd like us to cover on one of the upcoming shows, make sure you submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests. Joining us for this segment is Omer Taran. Omer is the CTO and co-founder of CyberReady. Today, Omer joins us to talk about overcoming challenges in multinational simulations. Omer, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Happy to be here. First time.
It's nice to have you on, Omer. I wanted to start by talking about awareness training, right? Awareness and training. I guess those are two kind of different things. But I wanted to dig into first, I think many of us who are working for enterprise security in enterprise security teams, something we know we need to do, but something we know we have some challenges with. What are some of those challenges with security awareness and training?
So I think the first challenge is that awareness doesn't really provide the security that the organization is looking to. So as more and more training is being rolled out, employees are more and more aware of security. It doesn't change their practices. That's why phishing is still on the rise. Phishing has never been eradicated. For the last 20 years, training is going around, and hackers just keep exploiting psychology and end user behavior. So the challenge is, how do we push, or how do we nudge employees into doing the right thing at the right time and helping the organization cope with the challenge, which is phishing attacks still going on undetected by security tools.
I feel like users know they shouldn't click the link, but they still click the link, is basically what you're saying, right?
So they know what they need to do, but actually when we're reading emails, we're in an autopilot mode. So there's there's system 1 and system 2. When you ask employees or people at home what they need to do, they know what they need to do. But when they read email, they're not thinking about what they need to do. They're just automating the process of understanding, what's in front of me and just doing it. So these are two different areas of the brain. These are two different coping mechanisms. So we're feeding the wrong one, basically. That's what we've been doing in the last, decades, just feeding the wrong system.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost, some phishing emails are almost panic attack inducing to get people to click the links. And it's interesting to think about, like you said, Omer, what areas of the brain that actually hits on, and then how can we tune our awareness and training to overcome that? It's, oh my God, I have a package. Oh my God, my taxes are overdue, right? And it's typically creating that emergency that is that panic attack inducing moment.
Yeah, so it's basically, if you look at phishing emails, they're usually very vague. in the sense that what they're doing is talking about something that might make sense, and eventually they're just exploiting the fact that by making that sense, employees or users complete the other elements. So eventually someone has a package arriving, right? They have a flight, and the email is always partly vague. Your flight, your package, your something is due, and that triggers what you call a panic mechanism, but basically, an automated reaction. Hey, I need to respond to this, and that response is faster than the logic of what should I do now. So, if we want to change it, we need to change the automated response.
I don't go back and remember, my security awareness training told me not to click that link. But the other thing is that email comes to me and says, hey, click here to claim your reward, your discount code, or my favorite one, hey, you completed awareness training, you did a great job. Click here to claim your reward. And that's really my fish, not coming from the security awareness and training platform.
We're not stopping to think about emails. So what we want to do, okay, you ask, what's the challenge? The challenge is how to manipulate the automated response that everyone has to be the right response. Okay, we can't spend 30 seconds reading every email and just analyzing it for the suspicious signs we've been taught, because otherwise with 200 emails in the inbox a day, we'll never get to read the important emails. So the question is, how can we make people respond fast, right? Like in sub-seconds and not in a 30-second quiz. And this is the challenge, but it can be done. But we need to change the practices.
So Omer, what are those practices, right? Because I've always had an issue with security awareness training because, to your point, right? It's not impactful enough. It's not triggering that kind of sense of safety or panic or something that it's more kind of hits you in the heart, right? It's something you have to do something different. So what is that technique that allows you to reinforce what you want the user to do at the appropriate time that they're going to take that action? Like, how do you do this?
So think back about all the things that you've learned how to do. Ride a bike, swim, things that you do. You only learn them by practicing again and again and again and perfecting your behavior, right? Sure, there's physics involved, right? But you didn't need to learn that. You needed to practice. And basically that's what security awareness training is missing. It provides the theory, maybe once a year or twice a year, but what employees need is not theory. They need practice, and they need continuous practice. So they need to be able to face a challenge continuously and be taught when they make a mistake. When you fall from the bike, you know what you've done wrong, right? And then you can try and correct it. But if I send you a simulation once every 6 months, and then 6 days later, I send you this theoretical package to learn from, it doesn't make an impact. If you want to make an impact, train everyone every month, help them learn better by providing them with situations that are similar to what they'll get in reality. Something in their inbox, they don't know when, and every time they fall for it, give them a small nudge. Here, you can have done this. This you could have detected, and keep on going, keep on practicing. Never stop, because the hackers never stop, right? They're attacking daily. So why do we train annually? Doesn't make sense.
Right.
You should learn from hackers, not from textbooks.
So you basically phish yourself.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's basically what you're going to do. Is you're going to create phishing emails to your own employees and see how they respond to them on a periodic basis. You said monthly. Probably should be weekly for some, but I mean, I assume you change the frequency based on the results, but you're basically phishing yourself and seeing how it goes.
Well, I kind of like the analogy of teaching your kids how to swim, because some parents, and I wasn't one of these parents, but I don't blame parents that are, they're kid just doesn't want to learn how to swim, and I've spoken with parents that are like, it just came to the point where I had to throw them in the deep end of the pool. It was literally sink or swim. Now, the parents are stating they're not going to let their child drown, right? But that's how some of us learn to swim. But once your child learns to swim, you don't feel the need to always like throw them in the pool and test them, right? You still watch them when they swim. And Omer, I think it's a pretty good analogy. And you're the one that brought this up, but I don't think we wanted to offend anyone by saying we're going to throw kids in the pool, right? But when you look at that from a phishing standpoint, I think it's interesting because if you know your users are pretty good at training and spotting phishing attempts, are you going to keep making them go through more elaborate training and making everyone basically jump in the deep end of the pool every week to make sure they can still swim is not something that you would do. But yet some programs do that with their users. They're like, regardless of your skill set, you still have to go do this training. And they're like, what? Why is that?
So I think that first of all, I follow up with the swimming analogy. I have 3 kids, and every summer I tell them, look, if you want to go to the pool alone with your friends, you need to be able to swim 5 laps. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you can't swim 5 laps, you're not fit to be on your own in the pool. And even though they know how to swim, right? But they know the theory. But every summer they need to practice it again. Okay, so skills are not there forever. Now, the challenge is not about training everyone on a monthly basis. I mean, if employees read, 50 to 200 emails on a daily basis, what's one email sent once a month, right? The thing is that we're not forcing training to those that actually detected the mock phishing. And this is the major thing. A lot of programs out there force training on everyone, but the idea is not to force training on everyone. It's about sending the tests to everyone continuously, but only for the ones that have failed, that were not able to swim the laps. Those are the ones that require the training. And this works so much better because now you're passing the ball to the employees. You're telling them, look, if you're good enough, you're not going to watch any video. You're not going to read content that you already know. But if you haven't passed the test, and it's a simple test, right? You have an email in your inbox. Obviously, you don't know that domain. Obviously, you've never seen that sender. And if you fail that test, it makes sense for you to go through the training. And this means basically that most of the organization doesn't really train every month. They get tested every month. But most employees don't need to train every month. But eventually, after 6 months of passing the test, eventually they fall. Why? Because skills are not there forever. You haven't ridden a bike for 6 months, you still need to, some time to get back to it.
So isn't part of the problem, though, that no matter what we do, we're answering emails all day. We have to open links and attachments. It's part of our job. And so no matter how good you are at taking a second or identifying something through a simulation, there's always going to be some opportunity for something to slip through because we all get so many emails. We're all busy. Half the time we're reading our emails on very, very small screens versus a computer screen, a mobile screen. And you have to sometimes actually click on a legitimate attachment or link. And no matter what you do, that's reinforcing the behavior. So you can't say, for instance, you could say if a kid's riding a bike, you can say, don't put your feet on the ground. You can't do that. You'll crash, you'll fall over. Or if you're in the pool, don't go underwater and try to breathe. You can't do that. But when we're always reading emails and clicking on emails and responding to emails and interacting with our coworkers and our partners and our clients, etc., we do have to reinforce some behaviors that could be risky.
Yes, and I think what we need to do in this context is kind of remove the blame from the users. We need to acknowledge that, yes, eventually users may fall. And if users fall for tests, they're not to blame that they were lazy. They don't care about security. It's because they also have, a boss asking them, you need to read more emails an hour. You need to answer faster to customers, right? So there are contradicting requirements within any organization, and it should be a training program that is blameless. We should acknowledge the fact that eventually everyone may fall, and it's fine. If they fell for a phishing simulation, nothing really happened. Okay? So we should have a training program that levels it up. It trains employees continuously. It constantly creates difficult tests for the employees, but it also doesn't put the blame on them if they made a mistake in the training program. That's why we have the training program, so they can make mistakes and use those mistakes to learn.
Oh, Lee, did you have a question? Sorry.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about where he was at with repeat offenders, or do we track for repeat offenders?
So first of all, being able to track repeat offenders in itself requires continuous training. Okay, a lot of organizations out there are treating repeat offenders as people that have done something wrong, but how do they know who is a repeat offender if they train employees twice or 3 times a year? I mean, what's the statistic here? So first of all, being able to say, hey, we are monitoring repeat offenders actually requires enough data points, enough trainings, enough tests to be able to say we have something which is statistically valid. Okay, so we use 12 to 18 simulations a year. And then once we have that measure, yes, we should train employees differently. If they're repeat offenders, we should train them more. Sometimes repeat offenders require different training. And we can do this if we're constantly measuring how employees perform within the training program.
Omer, how do you allow the user to tune and tweak the training materials? I know there's a lot of different strategies out there for constantly improving and tuning and tweaking the awareness and training materials and exercises. How do you allow people to do that on your platform?
Well, that's a tough question. We allow, basically what we do is we provide a lot of the materials pre-built. So everyone can tweak their programs, but actually the fun part is that we use machine learning to recommend the best training programs for our customers. We know that the decision, what to choose, how to tweak it, these are things that actually leave customers frustrated. So many options. I mean, who wants to see hundreds of videos just to make the decision of what video should I send? Who wants to go through 1,500 different phishing simulations to make the decision, what should I send next week, and will it work? Okay, even the decision, think about the responsibility. You're choosing something out of 1,500 options you've never really tested, and it has to work. It's not something really people can do. So while we allow them to tweak what we provide, we actually provide curated program that is based on data. So we tell our customers, look, these 10 simulations are the ones that you should be using in the next campaign. It would work best for you. If you want to change them, you can change them. If you want to tweak the content, you can tweak the content. But using our data, we know that this works. And we're seeing that, new customers for the first quarter usually tweak more. And then when they benchmark themselves, what they do against what the platform suggests, basically in the long term, they prefer to use our recommendations because eventually we're looking at millions of data points and they've never done this before, right? They're not experts. They're looking at an email. They don't know if it will work or not. But we know how to assign simulations to different departments, not based on our assumptions or the notion that maybe everyone in R&D likes to read emails from AWS. They don't, by the way. Instead, we're looking what's trending now in R&D, what's trending now in marketing, and we're using that data to kind of figure out, okay, this is what we should be using. This data is not something that customers can analyze on a daily basis like a machine learning engine can.
Omer, are you taking input into your machine learning algorithms from the users themselves and from external sources to see what's trending on the internet and what actual phishing attempts look like?
So we take actual phishing attempts, but we're analyzing to see what cognitively they're actually using. A lot of hackers just copy other hackers. Okay, so a lot of the attacks that you're seeing are not really new. They're just similar attacks. So there's no point in just creating more and more simulations that actually do the same. So we are using that external sources. We're using all of our customer base to kind of figure out what's working and what's not. So once we put in new attacks we've taken from the wild or we invented, think about the recent crisis, the Russian-Ukraine crisis. We could have waited for phishing attacks to come up, okay, and then see what's trending in the wild. But instead, we knew that every global event creates ripples of phishing. So instead of waiting, we just created those mock phishing that eventually came out like a couple of weeks after we've created them, because it just makes sense. If we're learning from hackers, we can also learn what they will do in the future, and that is adapt phishing attacks to global crisis situations. So yes, we are taking information from the wild, we're taking information from what we're seeing in our customer base, but we are also learning from the past and applying this to the future.
Fantastic. More questions for Omer?
Yeah, so I'm thinking, so must be a SaaS-based platform, right, Omer? Because you're pulling in data from all your customers. What does deployment look like? Like, it's just an email. So my guess is it's setting up these campaigns. You need a list of email addresses and users for the testing. Like, it sounds pretty straightforward, but is it that simple? Like, you set up the program, you add your users into it, and the next thing you know, based on your testing frequency, these emails just start showing up to test the users?
So it's basically that simple. I mean, most organizations out there, if they're not already using a cloud email provider such as Google Workspace or Microsoft Office 365, they're moving towards that. So the simplest way is just to integrate via those providers' APIs, and then we get the list automatically. So we update the list continuously. Employees are being onboarded on a daily basis. So instead of waiting for that periodic training program, we just onboard them into the platform automatically, assign them the appropriate training program. We know they're new employees, they need a special training program. If they're veteran employees, they need a different training program. So all of this is automated. We're really a single-click solution. The onboarding itself is very simple. Takes, for the large organization, can take a couple of days, but for the medium and small organization, it's up to a couple of hours just to set this up. And from there on, I don't think that organizations need to invest more than 2-3 hours on an annual basis running and kind of overseeing the program.
That's great. I mean, simple is effective, right? And then I assume the platform gives you all the reporting of how each of the employees are doing based on the different tests. So they actually have the data at their fingertips as these tests are going on throughout the year, so they can see where their repeat offenders are, how the overall base is performing across the organization, right?
Yeah, so I think, again, you're touching on a subject that I feel that is very much it's an area that organizations focus sometimes on employees instead of the effectiveness metrics. And I think the reason is that it's very difficult for organizations to measure effectiveness, so they start kind of chasing employees. But eventually what we're seeing is that when an organization has clear metrics of effectiveness, they stop caring about the individual employees. When they see that you are able to measure repeat offenders because you have enough data to measure that, and you're able to reduce the risk from repeat offenders, and you're able to take newly onboarded employees, which by the way tend to be high risk, okay, but you're able to train them fast enough to reduce that risk, then looking at the individual data becomes insignificant. When they're usually when they're looking for, looking at data at the employee level, it's because they're not able to see the forest. So they're kind of, diving into the trees.
Yeah. So when you think about effectiveness metrics, like where do most organizations kind of start and where do they get to? Like what kind of results do they get implementing a program like this? I'm sure you've got some metrics and baseline numbers out there somewhere that, they start here at 70 and they end up at 92 or whatever the number is. Do you have like how would they how would you kind of baseline them? Did you have some of those base numbers?
Yes. So what we do is our leading metric would be the proportion of the high risk group within the organization. And the high risk group are the employees that we know that click almost every email. Okay, so that group creates a lot of the risk. When you look at the risk, the threat surface for the organization, the high risk is the group that creates most of it. They click every email or almost every email. If you look at the organization at the beginning of the training program, that proportion is around 20% on average. Okay, so 20% of the employees just fall for phishing simulations, one every other email. After a year, you want to see that this number is around 2%. Okay, and then it declines. But I have to say that this proportion, after a year, if it's 0.5% or 3%, really is dependent on the organizational size. The larger the organization, usually you get a lot of turnover, and that also affects the number. So it can vary, but basically anywhere between 0.5% to 3% high risk employees after a year would make sense. Affected by turnover and size generally.
I mean, it's great numbers, right? I mean, you go from 20% risk population down to 3% risk population. I mean, that's good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
it is good.
Those are some really great metrics. What about metrics for individual users? Let's say I'm a user who's really good at spotting these. I've scored really well. Do your metrics change? How do your simulations change? How do you start measuring somebody at a higher level versus somebody who's either new or somebody who just isn't quite getting it?
So first of all, the way we measure employees at the individual level is not static. I mean, we're not computing the click rate for employees because eventually a lot of the data there would be stale. Okay, so we have kind of a dynamic metric that provides more input into the recent simulations. Because what we're seeing with veteran employees, sometimes they change position within the organization, and that in itself puts them in a riskier position, right? They were at the back office, they moved to, working with customers, so they were really low risk, but now they actually need to read 100 emails a day, and instantly they need more training. So that's one aspect of it. The training program itself uses every time you run a campaign, it has 10 different simulations. These different simulations have that varying level of difficulty. So different employees will be assigned with different emails. And as the organization evolves, the training program also evolves. So we always raise the bar. I mean, we never want to get to a situation where no one in the organization falls for phishing training, because this in itself sends a signal that phishing is resolved and there is no problem at all, right? So as the organization progresses and actually matures and detects phishing, it makes our job more difficult because we need to make sure that, and every month someone out there in the organization would tell their friends, oh, I fell for that phishing. I shouldn't have, but I did, right? So that we need to get that conversation always rolling. As long as phishing exists, we need the employees to acknowledge that it exists. And phishing training is the only way, because real attacks go under the radar. And so organizations can be hacked and employees would never be aware of it, right? So we use the phishing simulations to raise the bar and raise the awareness to the fact that it still exists, it's still a problem, we still need to train.
Omer, where can people learn more?
Well, they can go to cybersecurity.com. We have a lot of tutorials on our website, on our blog. You know, there's we have a video series about how to actually run a program. We try to create a lot of content for the community on how to run phishing training, how to run phishing simulations. We know that not everyone is using our platform, which is fully automated, but the philosophy, the methodology that we're using, yes, these can be applied even in other programs. I mean, running continuously, how to measure high risk, how to decide what to do. And a lot of it is what to decide not to do. There's a lot of friction involved, or a friction that can be induced within the process. So we do have a lot of content on our site that allows everyone to learn. And of course, they can reach out to us at the company. To me personally, we always love to have that conversation.
Yeah, there are some great resources there, so people should check those out. Omer, thank you so much for appearing on Enterprise Security Weekly.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Coming up next, the Enterprise Security News. Stay tuned.